The Western Australian Police Force rescued Cleo Smith. Cleo is alive and well.
This morning news the nation was waiting for: little Cleo Smith missing in Outback WA, back with her parents. My name is Cleo. Police detail the moment they smashed their way into a WA house.
One of the officers picked her up into his arms and asked her, "What's your name?" She said, "My name is Cleo."
And inside the case that has gripped the nation, a Carnarvon man under arrest, the latest on the police investigation.
This is 7 News with Ann Sanders.
Good morning. Welcome to a special edition of the Morning News on an incredible day. It's certainly the news we were all hoping and praying for. Little Cleo Smith, who's been missing in Outback WA, has been found alive and well. It's been 19 days since the 4-year-old went missing at a campsite north of Carnarvon. And this morning, police confirmed they rescued her from a locked house and a man is in custody. One of the officers picked her up into his arms and asked her, "What's your name?" She said, "My name is Cleo." Ben Downey begins our coverage.
For 19 days, Cleo Smith's parents never gave up hope of hearing this.
The Western Australian Police Force rescued Cleo Smith.
Police smashed their way into a locked house in Carnarvon around 1 o'clock this morning, local time.
One of the officers picked her up into his arms and asked her, "What's your name?" She said, "My name is Cleo."
Now, she's back in her parents' arms. Her mother Ellie posting on social media, "Our family is whole again."
Cleo was reunited with her parents a short time later. This is the outcome we all hoped and prayed for.
The 4-year-old was found not far from where she went missing in Carnarvon. One man has been arrested. Neighbours are in shock.
We got a shock ourselves that it was him. Yeah. Saw him in the Woolworths there buying Kimbies and that, but we didn't click on who it was, or what he was buying it for.
Cleo had been missing since October 16, having disappeared from the tent she was sleeping in with her parents at a popular camping site north of Carnarvon. 3 weeks of scouring bushland north and south of the region. A plea for help extended nationwide. Even her family home was searched for any clues. The big question, where was little Cleo?
It's the outcome we've achieved because of some incredible police work, and I want to thank Cleo's parents, the Western Australian community, and all of the volunteers. And of course, I want to thank my colleagues in the Western Australian Police Force.
Her parents were convinced the 4-year-old had been abducted. This was Ellie and Jake last month.
We miss you. And we want you home.
Today, now, back with their little girl.
Live now to Ben Downey in Carnarvon in WA. Hi there, Ben. This really is extraordinary news. Little Cleo now safely back in the arms of her parents.
Yeah, good morning, Anne. We can scarcely believe it right now. I'm standing at the crime scene, which is outside the man's house where Cleo was being kept, and that man is now in custody. You can see forensics are setting up now. The rangers have actually just removed a few dogs from the property that were making it difficult for them to begin their forensic operation. That's stopped now, so what you're seeing is live pictures of them setting up for what will obviously be quite a long forensic operation. They're going to have to be going through every single piece of item of clothing, of groceries, of anything that could possibly provide evidence to prosecute this case and record a conviction against this 36-year-old man from Carnarvon that police believe has abducted Cleo. Now, he's in custody now, and we're not really sure if he was keeping her at this property for the past 3 weeks or whether she was being moved around. But neighbours here have definitely noticed some suspicious things, seeing him driving around in suspicious behaviours, buying groceries and nappies and other things like that, that someone who doesn't have a child wouldn't otherwise be buying. So it was good old-fashioned police work and a tip-off that led detectives in the middle of the night here just before 1 a.m. And now we have the incredible result for not just police but Cleo's parents, Jake and Ellie.
Well, this is a case that has certainly gripped the country. Give us a sense of the relief in the local community. They must be just waking up to this brilliant news today.
Yeah, relief, astoundment and still shock very much, and adrenaline for some people. You have to understand how tightly this community is pull together. They've pulled any kind of resource they can, volunteering to join the search effort when it was not sure if Cleo had been abducted or if she'd wandered off. They've been donating their time. They've been printing bumper stickers to go on the backs of cars so they can keep the message alive that Cleo is likely still out there, and to just keep it alive so someone could come forward with a crucial piece of information. It now appears that crucial piece of information has been delivered. We've spoken to neighbours who've actually described the individual that lives here this morning as incredibly a nice person, pretty unassuming. Obviously, that assessment's going to have to be pretty severely revised when we find out more about him, and when he eventually faces court, if he is indeed charged by detectives. It's likely those charges won't happen for a while yet. They're still going to have to do a severe investigation of this property and any other locations that the interviews with that individual, as well as any other information here, might lead them to. We know the Police Commissioner, Chris Dawson, he's on the police flight up here. He should be arriving around 10:30 in Carnarvon. He's already received multiple briefings, and he'll be receiving more and working further with this investigation. But it very much is a good day for police in the Carnarvon community.
Well, it certainly is, Ben. Day 19, it has been a mammoth and extraordinary police effort to find her. Take us through this incredible emergency response.
Yeah, well, rewind to October 16 in the early hours, around 1:35 a.m. That was the last time Cleo was seen by her parents in her tent at the Blowholes campsite, around 50 kilometres north of Carnarvon. They woke up at 6 o'clock that morning, around 5 hours later, and she had vanished. That's when the full search and rescue effort swung into motion. For the past 3 weeks, we've had SES crews, several dozen personnel volunteering and coming from all corners of the state to this location. There is 100 detectives as a part of Task Force Rhodia, which was set up specifically with the intention of finding Cleo. 50 based here in Carnarvon, a further 50 in Perth. It's being headed up by the man who solved the infamous Claremont serial killer case, Rod Wild. He's now on his way up here as well, along with the police minister. They have been going through rubbish discarded on the highway. They've been looking at satellite images, going through drones, searching the dark web using facial recognition software for any sign of Cleo, looking through scrub and conducting ocean searches if she may have fallen into the rocks and treacherous waters. But over the past 3 weeks, there had been no sign, not a footprint, let alone a sign of her sleeping bag or any other item of clothing, until early this morning or late last night when police had that information. They wasted no time. The moment they had something to go on, they went with. Coming out now, we've just seen some more detectives arrive along with forensics. They'll certainly be making camp here with the gazebo, and I imagine this crime scene will probably be expanded actually to fit what will be quite a large forensic operation that's unfolding here, and it's showing no sign of slowing down, Anne.
Sure, and have they given you any more information this morning, Ben? Is there any clarity on what actually happened, how she was taken?
Not yet. What we do know is that it was impossible for her to have opened that tent by herself, and it was closed after she disappeared. The one interesting thing is that there was multiple sightings of this vehicle seen speeding away from the Blowholes campsite on the Northwest Coast Highway north of Carnarvon. Now, it matches the description of a passenger vehicle that's actually in the driveway. You can't really see it. It's behind a tree now in that forensics tape, but there is a passenger vehicle that's parked inside that property now. Whether that was the car that multiple witnesses saw speeding away, we're yet to confirm, but there are more things beginning to add up when it comes to witness statements from people who live around here noticing suspicious behaviour that are leading us to believe as well that police definitely do have their man.
All right, now we know little Cleo is back in the arms of her parents, Ellie and Jake. Where are they this morning? Are they in their home?
We've been told, well, the news that Claire was found would have been broken to Ellie and Jake in their home, but as far as I understand it right now, they're in the hospital. There's a local hospital here in Carnarvon, despite it being, a small town. She'll obviously have to go through a series of medical checks for obviously the incredible grim experience she would have had over the past few weeks, let alone the mental trauma that would have been inflicted being separated from her family for such a long time in such a scary atmosphere. Even though she was so close to home, just maybe a 5-minute drive from the family home, a 2-minute drive from the police station, she's now very much going to be receiving medical care. Unsure at this stage to what extent those injuries are, whether she'll maybe needed to be flown to Perth to undergo more severe medical treatment, or if the injuries themselves aren't too severe and it's better for her to be in her hometown. All of that information we'll get a clearer picture on when the Commissioner lands at 10:30, and we'll issue a briefing, hopefully not too long after that. But details around how Ellie and Jake are doing, besides relief, we're also waiting on. That's going to form part of the picture of this story as that it keeps unfolding today, Anne.
All right, brilliant work from you too, Ben. Thank you very much. We will return to you again shortly this morning. Thank you very much. That's Ben Downey live in Carnarvon. Let's go to Matt Tinney in Perth for more on this police investigation. Matt, do we know anything about this man who is being questioned by police?
Good morning, Anne. We know he's a 36-year-old man from Carnarvon. Beyond that, police are yet to release details. We know he's been in custody since police knocked on that door in Carnarvon at 1 o'clock this morning, local time, when a police officer went up to Cleo and said, "What is your name?" And she said, "My name is Cleo." We've heard from neighbours that they saw this man buying nappies in the supermarket, but he doesn't have children. Obviously, police have been combing the state for Cleo. They've been going through CCTV, they've been looking at mobile phone tower records, but it seems it's just a tidbit of information to police, some good old-fashioned police work that has led them to Cleo in that home. Now, obviously, the investigation is very much focused on finding Cleo. Now it switches gear as to what has happened to Cleo over this 19 days and trying to work out what charges can be laid against this man and the court process that follows.
All right, well, police were focusing heavily on the Carnarvon area, so therefore it may not be a surprise to them that she was found so close to her home.
I think it was perhaps a surprise, though, for people across Western Australia, because we've been told, Cleo could be anywhere. There were alerts put out to police forces right across Australia, from the west coast to the east coast. So people over here had thought, look, maybe she has been taken out of the state, despite the restrictive border policies we have due to COVID here at the moment. It's surprising to people here, I think, that she was found only 2 minutes from the Carnarvon police station, which has been the centre of this investigation. Amazing news for the people of WA. It really has sent shockwaves, this case. It's been compared to Madeleine McCann, it's been compared to William Tyrrell, those two not resolved. I think it was beginning to feel like, well, this could be another one of those. So people are definitely shocked this morning and relieved that Cleo Smith has been found alive.
Relief is certainly the word, Matt. It's just a wonderful news today. Now, we know one man is in custody. Could there be other suspects in this abduction case?
Police haven't revealed yet whether it was one person acting alone, perhaps, or whether this was a targeted attack and there were perhaps more people involved. Obviously, they'll comb through the home there. You can see the police have been in that house in Carnarvon. It looks like they're setting up for the duration there, setting up the gazebo. They will go through this and try to work out if any other people are involved whatsoever. Obviously, the most important thing is that Cleo is alive and well, but definitely people across Western Australia and indeed across Australia, because this case has gripped the nation, are waiting to hear more details. I suppose one of the biggest questions is why? Why would somebody take this 4-year-old girl, and also what has happened to her over these 19 days? Those are questions that are still to be answered.
Yes, well, we heard from Ben just a short time ago that she's in the local hospital there in Carnarvon with her parents, obviously just being checked out, and we certainly hope that she's okay. What has been the response as people in Perth wake up to this extraordinary news this morning? The Premier, I understand, has posted a message.
Yeah, the Premier has. He has said he is beyond relieved that Cleo has been found. The nightmare is finally over for her family. And he has said he is very thankful for the WA community, for all the support they've given over the past few weeks, all the little bits of information, the fact that people here have constantly been talking about Cleo. They've been keeping the media attention on this case. He is very grateful for the WA Police and what an amazing job they have done to, on day 19, be able to find Cleo Smith and reunite her with her mum and dad, Jake and Ellie, who have had quite a public ordeal. They've been faced with scrutiny themselves in these cases. Obviously, attention turns to the parents. Today, they've really been vindicated. They've been given their 4-year-old daughter back. A family is whole again, Anne.
Well, the Premier there certainly echoes the sentiments that we feel right around the country today. Matt Tinney, live in Perth. Thank you very much, Matt. And we'll return to more news on the discovery of Cleo Smith, alive and well in WA shortly. But to other news now. After a busy few days in Europe, the Prime Minister is returning home. Scott Morrison has completed his whirlwind trip for the G20 in Rome and the COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow, rubbing shoulders with world leaders. And as the Prime Minister heads home, former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull launched a scathing attack on Scott Morrison, saying he should apologise to France for his shameful behaviour. Political editor Mark Riley reports.
Well, Scott Morrison thought his biggest challenge here in Glasgow would be defending his government's climate policy. Instead, it's fielding heavy criticism from the French president and his immediate predecessor as Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, who has used the world stage here to try to tear Mr Morrison's reputation to shreds. Mr Turnbull backing his friend Emmanuel Macron and that allegation that Scott Morrison is a liar.
Scott Morrison elaborately deceived the French. And he doesn't pretend that he didn't. You know, he said we didn't tell them, he wasn't open with them. He's been criticised by the US president for his conduct. He's embarrassed the United States, apparently he's misled the United States, and he's deceived France. It is a shameful episode. Scott has always had a reputation for telling lies.
Mr Turnbull heaping layer upon layer of criticism over Mr Morrison in an extraordinary 20-minute outburst here in Glasgow, diverting from that only to praise Emmanuel Macron.
Emmanuel Macron is a huge fan of Australia and Australians. As he said, you can tell that. He has a warm feeling for Australia. So he's not sledging Australia, as Morrison said. He's complaining about Morrison.
Now, Scott Morrison's day here started much more pleasantly with an audience with Prince Charles, in which he used the opportunity to explain his government's climate position.
Now we've committed to net zero by 2050. Australia's done that here at COP26, doubled our climate finance commitments.
Now, that was just moments before Malcolm Turnbull launched his tirade against Scott Morrison. No response yet officially from the Prime Minister, but I'm sure we will hear that before the end of the day.
Mark Riley reporting. The attention of other world leaders, however, has been on limiting the impact of climate change. Delegates from over 100 countries striking a deal to reduce methane emissions and save the world's forests. Our Europe correspondent Sarah Greenhalgh has more.
Well, two separate but equally important announcements here in Glasgow today to curb climate change, which of course is what this conference is all about. The first is a promise from world leaders to end and reverse deforestation by the end of the decade. It's a $20 billion initiative including 110 countries, including Brazil, which is significant given the relentless pace at which large parts of the Amazon rainforest have been cleared in recent years. The second promise is a global pledge to cut methane emissions by 30% again by the end of this decade. Again, about 100 countries have signed on, but activists say it is still not enough. And sadly, some of the world's biggest polluters, countries including China, Russia, India and Australia, are refusing to sign this pledge. It is being spearheaded by the European Union and the United States.
It amounts to about half the warming we're experiencing today, just the methane exposure. So together, we're committing to collectively reduce our methane by 30% by 2030, and I think we could probably go beyond that.
After making that announcement, Joe Biden then blasted countries, including China and Russia, for failing to show up here in Glasgow in person. Earlier in the day, he met with Australian mining magnate Andrew Forrest, who is part of a new initiative of private companies and business leaders who are dedicated and committed to decarbonising clean technology. Fortescue Future Industries just signed a deal with the UK to be its biggest supplier of green hydrogen.
We take you back to WA now, where Premier Mark McGowan is speaking in Perth.
All of our thoughts go to them, and we're so pleased that little Cleo has been taken back to them. So it's just an exciting, uplifting, wonderful day, and I'm sure we're very proud.
Given that this is going around, can we ask you some questions about this first before we go
if you,
to the next one?
Yes, if you like.
This, Premier? Did you expect this morning?
Well, I got a message at 1:38 this morning from the Police Commissioner. I didn't answer it. I was asleep, but I did. I woke up at about 3 and I saw the message. So it was a great piece of news. And he sent me a photo of little Cleo in a hospital bed, sitting there smiling. So it was a wonderful piece of news. So, look, I don't know what to expect in these things. You never know what to expect. You hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. It's just an exciting day for all of us.
You talked about the analysts and the data. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that as to what you say their role was?
Oh, well, they analyse a lot of the phone material so they do all of that work, and that's a painstaking job because, as you know, there's thousands and thousands of calls and those sorts of things that can be looked at, but they analyse all that sort of thing and all the social media. So that's a massive task. So they did it methodically in a very painstaking way to uncover information, and so I'd just like to thank them. And as I said, I was just on the phone to them. They were having a team meeting, no doubt all very excited. Arlene, who leads the team, she told me it was great to provide the country with positive news this morning, rather than waking up this morning to something negative. It was great to wake up to some great positive news.
Was it that analytical work that coughed up the clue that finally led the police to Cleo?
Oh, look, I'll let police handle all this, but and they'll have to obviously, there'll no doubt be charges coming from this, so that process has to be gone through. But I think it was a lot of information that put the clues together. So it was both human intelligence, detective work around the town, and also some of the analytical work. So I just wanted to acknowledge the analysts because, they often don't get acknowledged, and so it's important they are acknowledged. But also the police team on the ground. Police sent 63 officers up to Carnarvon who've been working full-time on this for the last 18 or 19 days. So that's been a massive effort, plus all the other police officers there, plus all the community volunteers out searching the bush out there. It's been a remarkable effort.
Premier, you said that Australia's woken to some good news because in these situations, invariably it's bad, they're not resolved, or there's a tragic outcome. So, I mean, it is an amazing experience to go through this as well.
Yeah, it often is a tragic outcome, but this is great news and uplifting for the entire country, and especially for those people who put their heart and soul into finding little Cleo, and I know they're so proud and pleased of what has been achieved. And they're often unacknowledged. Police officers are often unacknowledged for what they do, and I want to make sure that we all acknowledge them for what they've done, all the people who did the work to solve this. It's one of those cases that, you're really quite unsure it'll ever get solved, but it was, and solved in a good way in that she's come home alive and well.
You said that you expect other police forces around the country will probably look at this. What do you think it was about their approach?
Well, they put their heart and soul into it, and they used the best of technology, and they also used all of their instinct, and they didn't leave any stone unturned. So they did all of that at once. I was talking to the analysts just now. I said, there'll be movies made about this. And we were talking about who would play who. I've got a few ideas as to, who might play who, but they were very, very excited by what they've done. And I was talking to the Commissioner. He was so excited, he was almost emotional about finding little Cleo, and the Deputy Commissioner as well. And as I said, Superintendent Rod Wild, I spoke to him this morning. He's just about to fly up to Carnarvon to join his officers, so he deserves a lot of credit as well.
For those officers who actually busted into the house and found her, it must have been an amazing moment. I know we can't know how they felt, but it must have been amazing. Well, I was told about that. They burst in, I think it was nearly just before 1 o'clock this morning, and they found a little girl, and she said, "My name is Cleo," and apparently it's recorded on a video, so that's no doubt an amazing piece of video, and it must have been just one of those spine-tingling moments when she said her name and they picked her up, so just a wonderful moment for all of us.
Do you anticipate that that reward helped in any way, and will you be paying any of it out to people who helped?
I don't know the full answer to whether anything's been paid, but I do know that these sorts of rewards do excite interest and conversation, and so the police have said that these sorts of things do help. So if there's people who have legitimately got a claim on it, we'll obviously we'll examine that very closely.
Obviously, it's a pretty incredible outcome, but it is also extremely concerning that a little girl was abducted from her tent, metres away from her family. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, it's remarkable. I mean, that this could happen, that someone could do this. It's an awful thing to do, but it's also a remarkably brazen and shocking thing to do, and to go to someone's campsite and unzip their tent and take their little girl. It's beyond belief, really, that someone would do that. Like many people, I love going out in a tent and camping, particularly with my children, and the idea that someone would come and steal your child away is beyond awful.
Do you know if extra officers are being sent in to Carnarvon to keep the peace, and what's your message to locals in Carnarvon?
Well, my message to all the locals in Carnarvon is thank you for helping solve this. This is a time for joining together and for supporting one another. It's not a time for trouble or turmoil. So that's my message. The Commissioner's going to Carnarvon from the Kimberley as we speak. He'll be sending the same message as well. It's a time for joining together and sharing in the success of finding little Cleo, not engaging in any other sort of trouble.
Are you going to speak to Cleo's parents? Have you spoken to them?
I haven't. I haven't spoken to them as yet. I suspect they're spending time with their daughter. But I've been. It's a really nice experience as Premier, I can tell you, to talk to police officers who have achieved this and analysts who've done it, and it's a privilege for me, to be honest, to talk to them. People who do these jobs are so technically competent and highly trained and devoted. So just to give them a ring and say hello and say thank you is my privilege, and it's one of the joys of the role.
And Premier, any thoughts for the families? Obviously, we're celebrating today, but who haven't had this sort of outcome?
Well, obviously these events are emotional for those sorts of families, very emotional. So no doubt all of our thoughts go to those families, and we know there's some out there. And we always hope for the best, and we never stop trying.
And you mentioned before that there's a picture of Cleo in hospital smiling. Can you share any more details about her condition?
No, I don't know any more about her condition, except what she said to the officer who found her, and I saw a photo of her sitting in bed smiling. So that's a lovely photo to see at 3 o'clock this morning. So that was very pleasant. My phone was running hot, all night. But it was because there were so many people who were excited by what had occurred and wanted to let me know. So I appreciate all of that, and in particular, as I said, all our police officers, volunteers, analysts, the Carnarvon community who helped. And especially Ellie and Jake, who've been through a lot. So what I might do is do an update on COVID, if that's all right. I've actually got...
And that is the WA Premier Mark McGowan there, obviously extremely happy with that incredible news of the discovery of 4-year-old Cleo Smith, saying that it is beyond belief that somebody would take a little child from inside a tent. And he thanked the police. He said the Commissioner is very emotional. He's heading towards Carnarvon, and he himself found out the news at 1:38 this morning, and he has seen a photo of Cleo sitting up and smiling in bed. So it's the best news that we can all hear. The discovery of little Cleo, alive and well, has certainly shocked many veteran criminologists. Joining us today is former detective and now crime author Duncan McNabb. Duncan, good morning to you after many years. Were you surprised that she was found alive and well?
Surprised and delighted. Fantastic news. And as we know from experience, the longer it takes to find somebody, the chance of actually finding them reduces significantly. After over 2 weeks, finding this 4-year-old child alive and talking is just brilliant.
Yes, and that news then from the Premier that he saw a photo of her and how emotional the police were when they discovered her all alone in that house. Police have been drip-feeding little bits of information. Would that have been a deliberate tactic as they honed in on this suspect?
Yeah, the drip-feeding of information is incredibly important in an investigation as fast-moving as this, because one of the greatest assets a detective can have is not only their forensics, their experience, is the public getting behind it, the public noticing something that might be out of place, something that concerns them, and they make that phone call, and all of a sudden it's that remarkable moment in police work where the light comes on quickly and you know you've got a good lead and you follow it. So drip feeding these little bits and pieces out as they can stimulates public interest. Incredibly important.
Yes, and that it certainly appears to be the case in this situation. And is it possible that there is another suspect because little Chloe was found in the house by herself?
Yes, and going to be a very interesting day for the detectives on the scene up there, going through the house, doing all their forensics, DNA, fingerprints, finding traces of other possible people involved in addition to the chap that they've already brought in for questioning. So a lot of work to get to this point, an enormous amount of work now to complete the investigation and also strap it up ready for any potential court matters. It's first day of a very long haul for them.
Do you think it was a targeted abduction?
That's been bugging me for ages. It's such a remote location, 70 kilometres away from Carnarvon, middle of pretty much nowhere, a very remote location. I suppose that what the investigation will yield is whether or not they targeted the family or whether or not it was just one of those utter random moments where someone has got an opportunity and seized it and taken a small child in a sleeping bag from a tent. I just don't know at this point, but I think we'll find out fairly quickly.
That $1 million reward, the Premier also just said it certainly excites interest, and it's possibly done so in this case too.
It does. The $1 million rewards not only is just, there's obviously an interest in the amount of money at hand, but what it really does is brings a big media event to town. And that $1 million gets everyone buzzing about it, possibly even more than they normally would be. So the stimulus and the possibility of a reward is incredibly helpful.
It would have been a big risk for police breaking into that house in Carnarvon. How would police have limited causing any harm to little Cleo?
I think they act with incredible caution. I presume they've got some sort of technology which will let them know how many people are in the house through infrared. And they move quickly and decisively. They've got to get to the child very, very quickly in case there is someone else in the house. The first objective in all of these things is to get through the door and get hold of the victim and make sure that they're secure, safe and in good hands, and then deal with the rest later on. I think they probably had a fairly close idea. I suspect the house there may have been a bit of observation, local inquiries before they've gone through the door, and then it's a very swift, fast move to precisely where they think she is.
All right, we're going to hear from the Police Commissioner in WA at 10:30 Perth time this morning in about 3 hours' time. What will their steps be now? What would be the procedure for the rest of the day and going forward?
The rest of the day, now that they've got Chloe back safely, the next part of the day is to find out whether this chap was acting alone, whether there are other people, and then start building the case to take to court. As I said, it's a long battle. They've got to make sure everything is done properly, strapped up, all the evidence is captured and analysed properly. It is the beginning of a very, very long process, but a great start by finding Chloe.
Absolutely, the best. Duncan McNabb, thank you very much for your insights this morning.
Thank you,
appreciate your time. And we'll have more to come on an incredibly good news day. Cleo Smith found alive, reunited with her parents. We're live to WA with the very latest developments next. Welcome back. Returning to our top story now, and the rescue of 4-year-old Cleo Smith from a locked home in the WA town of Carnarvon. Cleo had been missing from a remote campsite for 19 days. This is how Deputy Police Commissioner Cole Blanche broke the news earlier this morning.
It's my privilege to announce that in the early hours of this morning, the Western Australian Police Force rescued Cleo Smith. Cleo is alive and well. A police team broke their way into a locked house in Carnarvon at about 1 a.m. They found little Cleo in one of those rooms. One of the officers picked her up into his arms and asked her, "What's your name?" She said, "My name is Cleo." Cleo was reunited with her parents a short time later. This is the outcome we all hoped and prayed for. It's the outcome we've achieved because of some incredible police work, and I want to thank Cleo's parents, the Western Australian community and all of the volunteers. And of course, I want to thank my colleagues in the Western Australian Police Force. I can confirm that we have a man from Carnarvon in custody who is currently being questioned by detectives. We'll have more to say on the rescue of Cleo as the day unfolds. But for now, welcome home, Cleo.
Yes, indeed. Welcome home. For more, let's bring in criminologist Dr. Xanthi Mallet. Xanthi, good morning to you. One man in custody. What do you think has happened here?
Well, I think we have a predatory individual who has abducted Cleo, but although obviously we're being told there aren't close links to the family, and that's wonderful news, but there will be something that's led police obviously to this man's door in the early hours of this morning. So he either knows the family, he's seen Cleo, so there's some link between him and this child, because or he was at that campsite, there's something, that some acquaintance style relationship between him and the family, regardless of how tenuous, that's obviously led to him taking Cleo. So I think that's going to come out more over the next few days as the police release more information, because obviously the public is going to be thirsty for that information given the public interest in this case, which has been extraordinary. So just very happy to be here and be smiling this morning about a case that's had a wonderful outcome, because so rarely in child abduction cases, especially after 19 days, do we see such great news.
Yes, we're all happy too, Xanthi. We certainly are. How rare is it for a child like Cleo to be found more than 2 weeks after she first went missing?
Yeah, incredibly rare, especially when they're taken by a predatory individual. The statistics were not in Cleo's favour. So even very early on in this investigation, I was fearful for Cleo's safety, and certainly that has been the message coming out of WA Police. So I expected the case to be solved in terms, I got the sense that the police were moving towards a conclusion and that we were going to find out what happened to Cleo and who was responsible. But I didn't expect her to be found alive and well, and to be hearing this morning she's back with her family. So, this is a very, very unusual situation, and everyone is thrilled for the family, the community, and those officers who've worked tirelessly over the last 19 days to bring this result.
Can you cast any light on the potential motive behind the abduction?
Yeah, it's really hard to say in these early stages until we know more about the alleged offender, and I think we need to be careful there, because people have been shedding all sorts of theories online over the last few days or the last 19 days since Cleo disappeared. So I'd like to be cautious then and ask other people to be cautious as well with the motive until we hear more. But it is a great sign that Cleo has been found physically healthy and safe and well, and she's been returned to her family. So that's great news, and does give me hope that although this is obviously a traumatic event for her, that she will recover from this with the help of her family and the community, who will all no doubt pull behind that family today.
As wonderful as this news is, should parents be concerned that this could happen again?
I don't think so. Child abductions are so rare that I wouldn't want people to be looking at this going, oh, could this happen to me? So, it is thankfully in Australia an incredibly rare event, and I would just say the police were onto this straight away. It's been a very intelligent and strategic campaign to find Cleo. So wonderful news this morning. And I think, the fact is the offender alleged offender has been tracked down. Cleo has been recovered. So we should all take heart in that. And I don't think people should be fearful. I think the community can rest today and know that, that the right thing has happened, and the police have really worked very hard to get this result. So I think we can all take a collective breath this morning.
Well, thank you very much for your reassurance, and great to speak with you. Xanthi Mallet, thank you very much for your time this morning. Let's go back now to Ben Downey outside the house where little Cleo was found in Carnarvon. Ben, what's going on there now?
Yeah, well, since we've last spoken to you, I've had an opportunity to speak to some neighbours, and they've actually, who know the man that police have taken into custody. Incredibly, some of them have described him as a nice person, some of them knowing him for decades, and say, well, in his youth, he, like everyone, was a bit of a troublemaker. They never expected anything like this. He sort of kept to himself in that house, and is well known in the community. He's well known. He's got grandparents and parents who've lived here as well, that everyone seems to be quite close in his cul-de-sac on Tonkin Crescent here in Carnarvon. But right now, at the search zone, the forensic operation continues to ramp up. We've now got more vehicles coming in ever since they've extracted the dog from the property. So it's going to be a very long period for police, because their job, while they have found Cleo, is very much not over. Now they have to sort through everything inside that home to make sure they can get every piece of vital evidence about what happened to Cleo, where she might have been taken, if she was taken to multiple properties, if there's other addresses that they need to visit, if there's other individuals that need to be spoken to after interviewing this man. They need to now go through all of that information to pursue that conviction. So very much it's only beginning for police here in Carnarvon, even though Mother Ellie and Father Jake have Cleo back safe in their arms.
So the suspect is well known to locals, you say, Ben. What caused them to become suspicious if they say he was just a member of the community and by their accounts, just a nice, quiet guy?
Yeah, well, it maybe goes some way to explaining why, this person was able to be under the nose of everyone for such a long time without eyebrows being raised. Now, of course, in the past couple of days, another thing a neighbour we've spoken to has said is that their relative lives at the home just there, which is 18B, next to 18A. Now, that relative was saying that the person who lived at, that police have now taken into custody, they changed their movement patterns. Before, they were very much awake during the day and would take an early night and go to sleep, but in recent days they'd been spending a lot more time up awake late at night, going to and from the home. So very suspicious activity, and they did say that they reported it to police. So definitely would have been one of the key pieces of information that was given to police that led them to raiding this home early this morning.
So you're saying a relative was in 18B and they reported the suspicious behaviour in the house next door?
Yeah, not a relative of the person who's been taken into custody, but a relative of a witness we spoke to was living in 18B. They noticed the suspicious behaviour. Yeah, just to make that clear, they noticed the suspicious behaviour and they definitely reported it to police.
You can only imagine, Ben, how this day is unfolding for Cleo and her parents. Are we expecting to hear from them at all today?
We've definitely put the request in. I can't imagine what they're feeling. It's very much a whirlwind for detectives. For the family, it would be even worse. They were speaking to the media in the previous two interviews on the advice of police. Detectives informed them that they wanted and they urged the parents to speak to the media because it served an investigative purpose. They wanted this story to continue to be inside the minds of everyone in WA. Now, there's going to be family liaison officers that have been speaking to the parents throughout this entire 3-week period. During the search, during the investigation, they definitely would have touched base and raised that idea with the family. Whether they're going to be up for it or not at this early stage, we can't possibly say. I think the first thing that they want to do, which is very understandable, would be spending time with Cleo, but we definitely have raised it with the police authorities, whether we can speak to Jake and Ellie and potentially Cleo if she's up for it.
All right, we heard from the Premier earlier that he saw a photo of her sitting up and smiling, so that's just the best news, isn't it, Ben? And I imagine the local community is rallying around the family as they take in this news.
Yeah, and it's been true to form and the way they've been behaving across this past 3 weeks. They've very much been wrapping the family in cotton wool. Many people here, while they also know the offender that's been taken into custody, they also know the family quite well. And so when a lot of the criticism of mum and dad that's been coming from, online trolls and things like that, the family very much was around them and trying to protect them, saying, we believe you, we're still out there trying to find Cleo, we're with you this entire way, conducting vigils in the churches, trying to, summon any kind of divine intervention to help her found. It's difficult to believe. It's not hard to believe that a miracle's unfolded right now, considering she's been found alive. But the community is just overwhelmed and still sort of coming to terms with the fact that she's been found alive.
And WA Police, they've been persistent from the first day of her disappearance. All kudos to them, but it's certainly not over yet. What are the movements of police now?
Right, so we know that the Commissioner, the Police Minister of WA as well as the Chief Detective that's heading up this police task force, Rhodia, they're on a plane on their way up to Carnarvon. They're expected to arrive around 10:30 here, and so once they arrive here, we're expecting a briefing not too long after. They'll have time on the flight to get briefed and find out more about the offender, find out more about the search warrant that was executed here, what information they're comfortable to release. Obviously, it's a very delicate operation for them right now about what information they can release and what they can't, because they've got to walk that tightrope about not prejudicing any possible court cases, but they also want to put out and pat the detectives on the back, say how good of a job they've done, and inform the community that's been hanging on with bated breath about what exactly happened and how Cleo was found alive and well.
Well, I'm sure I speak for everyone in Australia when I say our thanks go to the police for their incredible efforts. An emotional day for them too, and amazing to think of the moment when they burst into that house and there she was in that little bed.
Yeah, incredible. And the fact that she wasn't just there, that she was talking, she could say her name, the fact that she could smile, I think that might have even escaped the wildest expectations of some of these officers that were expecting to be here for a matter of months. They leased properties in the town because they were going to be rotating officers through. They were, forensic officers saying that, they're going to be here and, miss Christmas, that they were going to spend with their families because they were so dedicated. They wanted to pull off a result for this family. So it's just an enormous coup for the the incredible work of police, the incredible work of civilians who've come forward and volunteered their time to the search, who brought forward the crucial pieces of information that's led to this result, but most importantly, Jake and Ellie and their extended family who never gave up hope that Cleo could be found and well, and that's been rewarded today in the most perfect of ways.
Yes, and a great day for you too, Ben. You must be feeling pretty happy yourself. Well done after all these days covering this story.
Thanks, Anne.
Ben Downey there live in Carnarvon. And still ahead in 7 News, a miraculous day in WA. Little Cleo found alive. We'll have more developments coming up soon. Plus, breaking news on the Melbourne Cup favourite. And Ronaldo comes to Man United's rescue once again in the Champions League. Returning now to the incredible news of the return of 4-year-old Cleo Smith, rescued alive and well from a house in the Western Australian town of Carnarvon. Let's bring in our Chief Network reporter, Chris Rees. And Chris, great to speak with you. This is certainly a case that has gripped the whole nation.
Yeah, absolutely, and not only the nation, of course, as well. The world. We're seeing this story ripple around internationally now, catching headlines across organisations such as CNN, the BBC, dozens of others following the lead. It's welcome news, obviously, happy news in these times, and news that international agencies want to capture and project as well. Because when you look back at the history of these things, Anne, abduction cases just so infrequently end in the way that Chloe Smith's have. We don't often see a good news ending. I've been racking my brains, we're going back through records to see similar other cases that have ended well. There aren't many of them, to be frank. Of course, the most internationally famous one, Madeleine McCann, ended in tragedy. That she's believed to have been killed. We've got to, I mean, this is a story, though, that will capture those headlines because there is something about the nature of this case in such a remote area of Australia. We're 1,000 kilometres obviously from Perth, another 70 kilometres north of Carnarvon, into this very remote place that we've seen the drone pictures you've been running this morning. There's something about that remoteness, that the hostility of the Australian outback, that captures the attention not only of the nation but, as I say, of the world. And we've seen it historically as well with other cases going back to perhaps the most famous nationally, Azaria Chamberlain's 1989-week-old baby goes missing, taken by a dingo. The other one that comes to mind as well, the Peter Falconio case in Barrow Creek, 2001, when his girlfriend Joanne Lees managed to escape. The gunman there, Bradley John Murdoch, that one went wild internationally as well. Again, similar scenes, similar settings in this remote Australian outback that just get people talking and get people interested. The mysterious and confronting nature of Australia's outback. But as I say, most times these stories end in such tragic circumstances. This time, good news, and aren't we enjoying it?
Oh, we certainly are. Now, as we know, there was a nationwide appeal, a $1 million reward. This must have helped the police surge.
Yeah, look, no doubt. I mean, that's an extraordinary move by WA Police and a real change in protocol there, not just for that state police agency, but nationally as well. They moved so quickly and offered that reward within 1 week of the case happening. And it was, I think, from memory, the equal greatest cash reward in WA history. Has it worked? Has it triggered a memory? Has it prompted a phone call that's led to this arrest this morning and the discovery of Cleo Smith? We wait to find out. The police are going to be giving their press conference soon. But there's something about rewards. They drop them deliberately to get people interested and focused in this case, to get them talking about it, to get them racking their brains about what they might have seen, what potential witness, moment, incident that they might have that could trigger a lead, that could trigger the arrest and the solving of the crime, and of course the pocketing of that money as well. It'll be interesting to see what the police say about this, because all of the analysts we've been speaking to this morning say this seems to have been some sort of tip-off. The fact that the police moved when they did this early in the morning at such a sudden time, it indicates some information. And as our brilliant reporting on the ground from the Sunrise crew there in Carnarvon have been saying too, the indications were that people were starting to notice the movements, the suspicious movements of the man that lived at that address, and flags were starting to be raised. So So was that reward behind the final tip-off, if there was one, that led to this? Hopefully we'll find out when the police give their press conference in a short time.
And Chris, WA's harsh border in many ways kept the nation and international media away from the search. This would be pretty unique in your experience.
Again, can't think of another case where this has happened. Normally the national press and the international press would be all over a story like this, Anne. And although the police often come out and say that the media are getting in the way of these kind of cases, at the background of that, they actually do want the media presence there. They do want the media headline to be pushing it, again, for the same reasons as we see the rewards working. It gets people talking. It gets this case in front of mind for so many members of the population. The police hoping to push and pull memories to try and get them to spark something, that vital clue that might bring them forward. Now, the interesting thing here, we couldn't get to the scene of that case. We couldn't get into WA. And the interesting corollary to that is the borders being so closed, and we've all been whinging about it over here on the East Coast for so long now, with Mark McGowan having such a hardline stand to his borders, probably worked in favour of the police investigation this time, in that suspect in this case couldn't move around and couldn't leave the state. You go back to a case like the Falconio one. Bradley John Murdoch was arrested in South Australia almost a year later, crossing the borders there, making it that much harder for police to be able to investigate, because they need to be able to cross-communicate with police in other states. So this time, borders closed, local case, local forensics able to get the result they got today, Anne.
Chris Reason, thank you very much for your insights this morning. Appreciate it. The discovery of 4-year-old Cleo alive and well has shocked many veteran criminologists. Let's go back again to former detective and crime author Duncan McNabb. Duncan, good to see you again.
Thanks, Anne.
How imperative was the partnership between the police and the public?
This is how cases are solved, particularly the ones that are protracted. We're over 2 weeks into this, and in cold cases as well. It's the public coming forward with that one snippet of information. Coming out of the recent reporting on this, it would seem that they're small town, a person very low key, a change in habit that the neighbours have noticed. Someone's decided this is a little suspicious, and they've done the right thing. They've contacted the police. They know that this case of Cleo is being driven so hard. So every little snippet of information comes forward. You might think it's insignificant, but you tell the coppers, and the police look at it and think, well, maybe there's more to it. They investigate, they do their background checks, they make observations, and these are the things that solve cases. To sit at home with a suspicion and not tell anyone doesn't help. So
a great case
this is great.
of the community and the police working together. Duncan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne.
Well, WA Premier Mark McGowan has spoken this morning on little Cleo being found. Let's take a listen.
It's a very exciting day. I know we're all so pleased and so happy with the great news that little Cleo Smith has been found alive and well. It's a remarkable, exciting, uplifting news that was a surprise, I'm sure, to all of us, but the result of some great police work by some great people. I'd like to especially acknowledge the West Australian Police, and in particular Superintendent Rod Wild, who led the task force into these matters up in Carnarvon. He had around 100 officers working full-time on this project, and then there was a whole range of volunteers, SES volunteers and everyone else across the community who did some amazing work searching for little Cleo.
Good morning. Joe Root will set off for Australia tomorrow night with a spring in his step. The late addition of Ben Stokes has given England a huge boost, and the English skipper says their recent win over Australia in the T20 World Cup, as well as India's victory at the Gabba earlier in the year, has lifted hopes of reclaiming the urn.
I think it just proves to the rest of the world that it's not a place you can't go and win. And I think it's just making sure that we do the work now.
The 5-test series begins at the Gabba on December 8. There are serious concerns for Melbourne Cup favourite Incentivise. He's pulled up lame after the race and needs further scans to examine a fetlock injury. Very Elegance trainer Chris Waller says he's just realising the magnitude of winning his first cup.
From a young child, I was fortunate enough to watch them, and to win one yourself is pretty special.
The first mare to win since Makybe Diva, Very Elegant, had a well-earned break this morning, and completely understandable, isn't it? There's a quick little
Yes,
sport
nice
hit
little
for you.
snapshot. Thank you very
There you
much.
go.
We're a bit
Thanks,
consumed
Anne.
by other news this morning, but thanks for that,
Absolutely, and
Shavo.
rightfully so.
All right, let's check your weather now around the country. And troughs are triggering showers and storms over northeast WA, South Australia, the Northern Territory, and Western Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. Warm, gusty winds are being drawn into Victoria and Tasmania ahead of the trough. Onshore winds are driving some showers into southwest WA and tropical Queensland, mostly settled elsewhere with some high pressure. So around the capitals, Brisbane mostly sunny, a top of 25 degrees. Sydney mostly sunny today, 25 degrees also. Canberra mostly sunny, a top of 25. Melbourne rain developing and 25 degrees. Hobart rain and 25. Adelaide showery 23. Perth mostly sunny 23 and Darwin 36 degrees. And that is 7 News to Now. Thank you for joining this special edition of 7's Morning News. We'll certainly keep you up to date throughout the afternoon, including all the developments from WA and finding little Cleo Smith. Our next major bulletin is coming up at 4 p.m. I'm Ann Sanders. Thanks for your company. Have a great day.